Consistency is one of the keys to success in the NFL. The teams that are consistent on a week-to-week basis are typically towards the top of the league and find themselves making deep postseason runs. But what if you're just consistently average? Enter Jeff Fisher. Jeff Fisher had a long 22-year coaching career in the NFL, split between the Titans and the Rams. Fisher is tied for 8th most years serving as an NFL head coach, with his name being sandwiched between legends like Chuck Noll and Mike Shanahan. So you would probably think that for a head coach that managed to stick around in the NFL for that long, that Jeff Fisher consistently led his teams to high levels of success year in and year out. Yet if you look at this column for the top 15 longest tenured head coaches in NFL history, there's something that sticks out about Jeff Fisher. Fisher only has 8 more wins than losses during his entire NFL coaching career. In 339 games coached, Jeff Fisher has a 173, 165-1 record. Sure, Tom Coughlin is only sitting at 20 more wins than losses, but I'm going to give him a pass here because he was the first head coach of an expansion franchise and he won 2 Super Bowls. So with a 51.2% winning percentage and 10 of his 21 full seasons ending with either 7 or 8 wins, can we say that Jeff Fisher is the most mediocre head coach in NFL history? Well, before we do that, let's go through the football career of Jeff Fisher to look at his highs, his lows, and his impressively average seasons to see how he even kept a job for as long as he did. Jeff Fisher's career in the NFL actually started as a player. He was drafted in the 7th round of the 1981 NFL Draft by Chicago, where he served as a corner and return man for the Bears from 1981 to 1985. He did have 5 interceptions and 5 forced fumbles in the 1981 and 1982 seasons combined, along with a punt return touchdown in his rookie year. He unfortunately broke his leg on a punt return in the 1983 season on a tackle made by Bill Cowher, which is an interesting coincidence. He played the entirety of the 1984 season, but missed out on the magical 85 Bears season as he was on IR for the entire year with an ankle injury. But this may have been a blessing in disguise, as Fisher used this year to start his coaching career as he served as Buddy Ryan's defensive assistant during the Bears' 1985 Super Bowl winning season. And once Ryan headed for Philly in 1986, one of Ryan's first moves was to hire the young Jeff Fisher onto his staff, where he served as DB's coach for 2 seasons. Although this meant a pay cut for Fisher, as if he made the Bears roster as a player for the 86 season, he would have made $140,000 plus potential bonuses, but serving as DB's coach would only pay him $50,000. And originally Fisher declined the job, but called Ryan back 5 minutes after declining to see if the job was still available. This ultimately ended up being the right move for Fisher, as he was promoted to defensive coordinator for the Philadelphia Eagles in 1989 at just the age of 31. In Fisher's first full season as DC, the Eagles were 5th in points against while leading the NFL in interceptions and sacks. Then in 1990, the Eagles took a bit of a step back in points against, ranking 12th, but ended the year 2nd in sacks and led the NFL in rushing defense. Shortly after the Eagles were eliminated from the playoffs, Fisher accepted the DC role for the LA Rams in a reunion with his college coach John Robinson. Also, his decision to leave Philly was made easier as Buddy Ryan was let go as head coach following the 1990 season, and supposedly Fisher was also in the running to take over that role for the Eagles, but that decision didn't swing his way. Fisher's time in LA didn't last long, as he only spent 1 season with the Rams before taking a lesser role for the following 2 seasons, serving as DB's coach once again, but this time in San Francisco. In spite of taking this demotion, there was a certain kind of aura around Fisher during this time, with news outlets even calling him a wonderkin. And once you have that kind of association with your name, teams will take chances on you. Also, he was the anointed protege of Buddy Ryan, and in the NFL, that sort of association can carry a lot of weight for you throughout your entire career. So heading into the 1994 season, the Houston Oilers hired Jeff Fisher as their defensive coordinator, replacing his former boss Buddy Ryan in the process. This was a rough year for the Oilers as they went 2-14, but after head coach Jack Pardee was fired following a 1-9 start to the season, Fisher was promoted to head coach to lead the team through the end of the season. Fisher only went 1-5 to end the year, but the Oilers did end the season on a win, which always leads to some good vibes heading into the offseason. But an interesting move was that the Oilers awarded Fisher a 3-year contract just 1 day after Jack Pardee was fired. I don't know how many, if any, interim head coaches were given a long-term contract that quickly, but Oilers owner Bud Adams must have really believed in their young, innovative defensive play caller. The contract did include an out clause for both sides, but that wasn't enacted on either side, so we head into Fisher's first full season as a head coach. The Oilers had much more success this season compared to last, and ended the season with a 7-9 record. Following the season finale win against the Bills, Fisher said in a post-game presser, "We said 7-9 was a lot better than 6-10. Oh, Jeff, how you are going to regret those words later down the line." But there was again late season momentum as rookie Steve McNair played in the Oilers' final 2 games, which were both victories for the young QB. Then miraculously, Jeff Fisher in his next 3 seasons went 8-8, 8-8, and 8-8. It takes a special type of coach to pull that off. That coach, of course, being Jeff Fisher. In 1996, the Oilers drafted Heisman winner Eddie George, who ended up rushing for over 1,300 yards and had 8 touchdowns, while Chris Chandler started the first 12 games going 6-6, and Steve McNair started the final 4 games going 2-2. This would be the last season in Houston as the Oilers headed for Tennessee. The fans in Tennessee would be greeted with 2 more 8-8 seasons, which leads us to the 1999 season and the first year with the team under their new name, the Tennessee Titans. In the 1996 offseason, Fisher was signed to a 2-year contract extension which set him as the franchise's head coach through the 1999 season. So entering into his final year on the deal, Fisher needed to come out and prove that he was more than mediocre and that he could actually lead this team to greater heights than a 500 record. And boy did he. The 1999 Tennessee Titans went 13-3. They qualified for the playoffs for the first time in 6 seasons and had their first playoff victory for the first time since 1991. Eddie George had just over 1,300 yards and 13 combined touchdowns, while rookie Javon Curse burst onto the scene with a 14.5 sack season where he won Defensive Rookie of the Year, made the Pro Bowl, made First Team All-Pro, and finished second in Defensive Player of the Year voting, just 6 votes behind Warren Sapp. And just a funny little tidbit about this season. The Jaguars went 14-2 this season and lost in the AFC Championship game. All 3 of the Jags' losses this season came at the hands of the Titans. But I'm getting ahead of myself, because in the Titans' wildcard matchup against the Bills, we had one of the most iconic plays in NFL history in the Music City Miracle, where the Titans beat the Bills 22-16 off of a kickoff return lateral touchdown. Then another close victory against the Colts in the divisional round, where Eddie George had 160 yards on the ground with a touchdown. Fisher's defense stepped up in a big way, holding Manning to 19 of 42 passing, with Edgerrin James only having 56 yards on the ground. A 33-14 win over the Jags sent the Titans to the Super Bowl, where they eventually fell to the St. Louis Rams in a close loss where Kevin Dyson was just 1 yard short from the end zone. A touchdown and extra point would have tied the game with essentially zeros on the clock, but a chance at the Lombardi slipped through Fisher's fingers at the age of 41. Even though it was a tough ending, this season couldn't have gone better for Fisher's career. Heading into the 1999 season, Titans owner Bud Adams gave Jeff Fisher a playoffs or pink slip decree, so Fisher was really coaching for his job throughout the entire year. Contract negotiations between Adams and Fisher started days before the Super Bowl, with the widespread idea that Fisher would become one of the highest paid coaches in the NFL at a figure of around $2 million per season. But things weren't always smooth between Fisher and ownership. Adams liked to get involved with coaching decisions, including wanting to make some changes on the coaching staff, including the dismissal of at least one of its members, which Fisher pushed back on. Fisher and the Titans finally agreed on a 3-year deal that would keep him with the team through the 2003 season, and this negotiation came down on the wire, as Fisher gave the Titans a deadline to complete negotiations by the end of minicamp, or they'd have to wait till the end of next season when his contract fully expired. But with his job intact for at least 3 more years, Fisher headed into the new millennium, looking to repeat the success that they had in the prior season. And in the regular season, they did just that. They again went 13-3 this season, but it was their defense that carried much of the weight. The Titans were second in points against, allowing an average of 11.9 points per game. They let up less passing yards and touchdowns than the 2000 Baltimore Ravens defense, along with less total yards on the season. Corner Samari Rolle made his first All-Pro team with a 7-interception season, while linebacker Randall Godfrey and safety Blaine Bishop made second-team All-Pro. But I can't talk about the 2000 Tennessee Titans and not bring up Eddie George. In the 2000 season, Eddie George ran for 1,509 yards with 14 touchdowns while leading the league in rushing attempts at 403. He made first-team All-Pro and was third in MVP voting as he was responsible for 54% of all Titans touches this season, which is just insane volume. Also, Derek Mason made first-team All-Pro with 2,690 all-purpose yards as a receiver and returner. He set the all-time single-season record for all-purpose yards, which stood for over a decade until Darren Sproles passed him up by 6 yards in 2011. The Titans ended the year with 2 shutouts, and it was nearly 3 as the Bengals only had a field goal in their Week 15 matchup. So with the first-round bye, the Titans matched up against the Ravens in the divisional round for a strength-on-strength matchup. This would be the third meeting between these two teams, as the Titans and Ravens already faced off twice in the regular season. In their first matchup, the Titans pulled out the win as they picked off the Ravens 4 times and sacked the QB 5 times, while holding Jamal Lewis and Priest Holmes to 88 rushing yards on 23 carries. Then in their Week 11 matchup, the Ravens went up by 1 with 25 seconds on the clock off of a Trent Dilfer touchdown pass to Patrick Johnson to narrowly beat out the Tennessee Titans 24-23. But in this rematch, the Ravens managed to beat the Titans 24-10 in a game where Baltimore only had 6 first downs compared to the Titans' 23, 49 rushing yards compared to the Titans' 126, and only completed 5 passes compared to the Titans' 25. The Ravens pulled away in the fourth quarter with a blocked field goal returned for a touchdown and a Ray Lewis pick 6. Following the loss, Fisher said, "If we can make a couple of kicks and we don't have the turnover for a touchdown, it's a different game as far as we're concerned." But those things happen. The 2001 season was a step back for Fisher as the Titans went 7-9. The omen for the season was set early in Week 1 with a loss to the Dolphins where the Titans were favored by 6.5 points. The Titans were never able to find their footing this season, oscillating between wins and losses throughout the entire year. And after starting 1-4 the following season, Titans owner Bud Adams put it out into the media that, "I'm not very happy with what we're putting out on the field, and it looks to me like we're getting outcoached." Yikes. Fisher responded by saying, "I didn't take it personally. I just felt it was frustration on his behalf." After that game, he was feeling the same frustration I was feeling. I was equally as frustrated as Mr. Adams, which is honestly probably the best response you could give in a situation like that. But folks were starting to turn a side eye towards Fisher, with one news outlet saying that the Titans need to do something quick, or Jeff Fisher might find himself having less job security than a Hawaiian ski instructor. The Titans did turn it around that season, going 10-1 through the last 11 games, giving them a first-round matchup against the Pittsburgh Steelers, who they beat earlier in the season. The night before the game, Fisher showed Titans players clips from Remember the Titans, which is a real high school freshman B-team coach-ass move. Well, I guess it worked out for Fisher as the Titans won in OT, but they also dealt with some pyrotechnical prematurity, where the Titans stadium staff set off the fireworks after a made field goal that didn't count because Bill Cowher called a timeout prior to the kick. This set up yet another rematch in the AFC Championship game, but this time against the Raiders, who they got torched by earlier in the season 52-25. Well, it was more of the same in this rematch, with the Raiders putting up 41 points, with Rich Gannon going for 286 yards and 3 TDs. Even though Fisher lost another chance at a Super Bowl appearance, he still managed to reach great feats during his young coaching career thus far. He was the 4th youngest coach to reach 60 victories since 1960 when he attained that mark in 2001, and became only the 5th head coach in NFL history to lead his team to consecutive 13 victory seasons. Fisher was the NFL's winningest coach over the past 4 seasons with a 44-20 record, and was the only coach in franchise history to win 80 games during his career. So heading into the 2003 season, with only 1 more year left on his deal, Fisher did it again, and bought himself another 3-year extension, which set him up through the 2006 season. 2003 was another double-digit win season for Fisher, as the Titans went 12-4 with the offense carrying the team this time around, as Steve McNair won co-MVP with Peyton Manning, Eddie George put up yet another 1,000-yard season, and Derek Mason had 1,300 yards on the year. This set up yet another playoff matchup between the Titans and the Ravens. Fisher had lost 5 straight games to the Ravens and was 6-8 against Baltimore in his career thus far. But in what was a very close back-and-forth game, the Titans were able to pull off the win with a go-ahead field goal by Gary Anderson with just under 30 seconds left on the clock to send them to the divisional round. The script was turned on them against the Patriots as they lost by a field goal, as the Patriots' defense was just too much for the Titans to handle, with Eddie George only being able to put up 48 yards on 16 carries. However, 4 playoff runs in 5 years started to take a toll on this team. Steve McNair dealt with injuries for the past few seasons and only ended up playing 8 games in 2004. Eddie George was released ahead of the 2004 season, with his insane workload these past few years catching up to him. And other key starters like Javon Curse and Frank Wycheck were no longer on the roster as well. So Fisher and the Titans ended the year 5-11, then ended next season 4-12. Before the 2006 season, the Titans traded away Steve McNair to the Ravens for a 2007 fourth-round pick to usher in a new era at QB with Texas star Vince Young. This season was the last full season on Fisher's contract, and even though Bud Adams said that Jeff Fisher isn't going anywhere after the 2006 season, who knows how things could have gone if the Titans had another disappointing season. Coming into the year, the Titans had an over-under win total set at 5.5 wins. And Fisher took this team over with an 8-8 season, his first 500 season since 1998, even after starting the year 0-5 and rallying back to finish the season 8-3. The Titans exercised their right to extend Fisher's contract by a year, then awarded him with a 4-year contract extension with the deal thought to be worth anywhere from $5.5 million to $6 million per year through the 2011 season. To this point, Fisher was proving himself to be a great contract year coach, putting in a good season every time contract negotiations were coming up in the following offseason. Fisher was entering year 14 with the franchise and looking to get back into the playoffs following 3 years of missing out on the postseason. The Titans finished the season 10-6, mainly off the back of their defense. After spending 3 straight years towards the bottom of the league in points against, Fisher and Jim Schwartz were able to revive the Titans' defense with standout performances from Albert Hainsworth, great sack production from Kyle Vanden Bosch, and 5 picks from Keith Bullock. The Titans' struggles on offense caught up to them as they were only able to score 6 points in their wildcard matchup against the Chargers, with Vince Young limited to 138 yards and Lendale White only getting 69 yards on the ground. Heading into the 2008 season, many analysts were pinning the Titans to regress from their 10-win mark and finish 3rd or 4th in the division. And although the season started with a win, Vince Young hurt his knee, which sidelined him for a few weeks. But even when Young was cleared to play, Fisher decided to go with the veteran Kerry Collins, with Young serving as backup for the rest of the season. It is well documented the rocky relationship that Young and Fisher had throughout their entire time spent as a pair, with many notable events throughout their entire time on the Titans. And if you want to learn more about their relationship, check out this great secret-based video on their beef. Fisher and the Titans finished the season 13-3, setting up yet another playoff matchup against the Baltimore Ravens. But how was this team able to pull off such a successful season? Enter rookie Chris Johnson. Johnson ran for 1,208 yards and 9 touchdowns behind an elite offensive line that included 3 All-Pros in the right tackle, center, and left tackle. Lendale White also had 773 yards on the season with 15 touchdowns, accompanying Johnson as the thunder to his lightning. But defense was again the Titans' calling card. Fisher and Schwartz once again crafted a defense that finished 5th in DVOA, led by Albert Hainsworth manning the middle of the defensive line. However, for all the success that the Titans had, they weren't able to make it past the Ravens. This loss wasn't just devastating for Fisher because he wasn't able to make it to the conference championship game, but this loss was devastating for Fisher because, unbeknownst to him, 2008 would be the last winning season that Fisher would ever have in his head coaching career. 2009 was an 8-8 season, and Fisher was beginning to be known by fans in Tennessee as Cocho Ocho, or Coach 500. This was Fisher's 5th 8-8 season in his full 15 years of coaching the team. But this season is really where Fisher started to lose his team, and I think lose some of the juice that he had as a head coach. The Titans started out 0-6 this season, with the 6th loss being a 59-0 beatdown against the Patriots. Then a mere 3 days after that loss, with his team winless through 6 weeks, Fisher was speaking at a charity event where he then took off his suit to reveal a Peyton Manning jersey underneath. His first words at the mic after that big reveal were, "I just wanted to feel like a winner." I think I understand what he was trying to do, trying to be self-deprecating and get a laugh at his own expense. But that doesn't really work for fans and the team when you're the head coach. In the week that followed, Fisher gave a non-apology apology on his radio show saying, "I really apologize if I offended anybody, but if you're offended over the nature of that type of thing, then I think you really need to rethink things. And I'm sorry if I offended anybody, but if I had to do it again, I would do it again." Well, after this little stunt, Bud Adams got involved in the personnel process and told Jeff Fisher directly to play Vince Young over Kerry Collins, who started the first 6 games of that season. But things were seeming a little shaky between the owner and head coach before that as well, because a few weeks prior, Fisher flew to Texas to have a face-to-face meeting with Bud Adams. And everyone knows, if your boss calls an impromptu meeting, things are typically not going too well. Bud Adams also got fined $250,000 in 2009 for giving Bills fans the double birds, and I just thought that was a fun little tidbit. Well, with Young back under center, the Titans went on a 5-game winning streak where they put up 30, 34, and 41 points in their first 3 games after the bye. And although playing a new quarterback can always breathe new life into a team, this is more of a Chris Johnson thing. In those 3 high-scoring games, Johnson had 6 TDs and finished the year on an 11-game streak with 100-plus yards, ending the season with 2,006 yards, earning him the nickname CJ2K. He also broke Marshall Faulk's total scrimmage yards record, ending the year with 2,509 total yards. But 2010 would be Fisher's last season with the Titans and the end of his 16 full seasons coaching the team. Yet his firing in the offseason was a strange situation. Fisher had only 1 year remaining on his deal, and on January 11, 2011, Bud Adams told the media that Fisher would be returning for his 17th season as Titans head coach. This made sense as the decision came 2 days after Bud Adams essentially parted ways with Vince Young, who of course had a long history of tension with Fisher. As Adams said, "We couldn't keep them both. When you have a problem, you have to fix it. The coach is a veteran guy and Vince is a young guy, and Fisher is under contract, and he didn't want to have Vince playing for him." But then on January 27th, just 16 days after Adams said that Fisher would be coming back coaching the team, it was announced that the Titans parted ways with Jeff Fisher. This led to confusion from fans, the media, and players, with Chris Johnson saying that, "I thought it was either going to be one or the other, Vince Young or Coach Fisher." So with both of them being out the door is a crazy situation, something I really didn't expect to happen. One of the things that could have led to this abrupt departure could have been Fisher's attempts to hire his son, and there were reports out there that Fisher extending his assistant coaches another year didn't sit well with Adams. When asked about the move 1 day later, Fisher said that he and the Tennessee Titans had reached a point where it was time to move on and part ways with each other after 16 full seasons. He also said, "I think I'm tired. I think I need the rest. Those that coach 10 years that take a year off are 3 times better coaches in year 11. I'm going to take time." And again, it's easy to make fun of Jeff Fisher now, but at that point in time, Fisher coached more games in the NFL for one franchise than all but 6 Hall of Famers: George Halas, Tom Landry, Don Shula, Chuck Noll, Curly Lambeau, and Bud Grant. He ranked 3rd among active coaches in career wins with a record of 147 and 126, behind only Bill Belichick and Mike Shanahan. And he was 20th in career coaching victories. But he wasn't gone for long. After taking time off for the entirety of the 2011 season, Jeff Fisher was back in the NFL as a head coach for the St. Louis Rams. He interviewed with both the Rams and the Dolphins, but ultimately chose the Rams, replacing Steve Spagnuolo, who was fired a day after the 2011 regular season ended. It was reported that his contract was worth about $7 million per year over 5 years, which was a long-term stamp of confidence by owner Stan Kroenke. Les Snead was also hired as the Rams GM as a total reset of head coach and front office heading into the 2012 season. Fisher improved the team from a 2-14 record in the prior year to a 7-8-1 record, barely missing out on the team's first winning season since 2003. Following the season, linebacker James Laurinaitis said, "I was on a team that was 7-9, came back and didn't do well. That's not this group. The postseason, that's on everyone's mind, and it's not just a far-fetched hope, it's an expectation." Well, amongst all the excitement heading into 2013, Fisher did it again. And by did it again, I mean he led the Rams to 7 wins. Fisher did have a revenge game against the Titans during Week 9, but wasn't able to pull out the win, with Chris Johnson going for 150 and 2 touchdowns. And unfortunately, 2014 wasn't much kinder to Fisher. Sam Bradford tore his ACL during preseason, so the Rams split QB time between Austin Davis and Shaun Hill, who combined for 3,400 yards, 20 touchdowns, and 16 interceptions. But hey, on the bright side, at least he didn't go 7-9 this year. Well, that's because he went 6-10. Fisher was starting to be placed on the hot seat as Rams fans and media expected more from their new head coach. They were happy that they were no longer at the bottom of the league, but mediocrity only goes so far. So in what was the Rams' final season in St. Louis, Fisher went 7-9 once again, giving the team 7 wins for the 3rd time in 4 seasons. The Rams' defense was in the top half of the league, but their offense was putrid, putting up less than 14 points on 7 different occasions, with Nick Foles and Case Keenum under center. And you could see that this mediocrity was starting to get to him, as in a late season presser, he said that anyone that doubts the efforts of this team can kiss my ass. shortly before abruptly ending the press conference while two reporters were in the middle of asking questions. The Rams were called dirty by players, coaches, and media members, and let's see who the Rams DC was at the time. Oh God. But towards the end of the 2015 season, Ian Rappaport reported that Jeff Fisher was not at risk of being fired after the season. He also reported that owner Stan Kroenke is completely focused on the team's attempted move to Los Angeles and does not want to start from scratch with a new coaching staff. And this leads us to maybe the most infamous moment in Fisher's career. The Rams were featured on Hard Knocks in the offseason, and when talking to his team, Fisher said, "I am not fucking going 7-9 or 8-8 or 9-7 or 10-6 for that matter. This team's too talented. I'm not going to settle for that. I know what I'm doing." We had some 7-9 bullshit this morning. And you know what? He knew 7-9 bullshit better than anyone, so I guess he was the most qualified person to talk about what 7-9 bullshit looked like. I mean, seriously, who better to talk to about this aforementioned bullshit than the coach that went 7-9 4 times in his career, along with a 7-8-1 season? Fisher headed into the 2016 season on the final year of his 5-year contract that he signed back in 2012. And there were reports that contract extension talks were expected to pick up during the offseason. And that looked like it would be a good move, as the Rams went 3-1 through their first 4 games of the 2016 season. And then the wheels fell off. The team lost 7 of their next 8 games, which led up to a Week 14 matchup against the high-powered offense of the Atlanta Falcons. Of course, at this point, people were starting to point fingers at Jeff Fisher, but even after his 3rd loss in a row to the Giants back in Week 7, there were reports of Fisher being on the hot seat, with NBC LA's Fred Roggins saying Jeff Fisher's fate will be sealed after the next 4 games. Well, he made it past 4, but he couldn't make it past the Falcons. After a 42-14 loss to the eventual NFC champs, Fisher was fired the following day, ending his coaching career with the Rams with 45 losses and marking the final time Fisher would serve as a head coach in the NFL. What makes this firing even worse is that a report came out 8 days prior that Fisher had signed a 2-year contract extension in the offseason. And what makes it even worse is that the Rams season was being filmed and caught the moment where Fisher had to tell his staff that he was fired, which was broadcast to the entire world. Fisher officially ended his 22-year head coaching career with a 173, 165-1 record, giving him a 51.2% winning percentage. So this begs the question, how on earth did Fisher keep a job for so long? Well, for all of his faults, Fisher was consistent and stable. He could bring out mediocre play from a poor roster, and that does have value. The Rams were 2-14 the season before Fisher got there. He turned them around in 1 season, leading them to 7 wins. He often brought out the best of his teams at the right times as far as his contracts went, punching well above expectations to buy him a couple more years. I mean, there was also a stretch where Fisher went 56-25 and made it to a Super Bowl. And that kind of output can buy you a lot of time in the NFL. And by many accounts, players loved him. But the times and innovation caught up to Jeff Fisher, and he just couldn't adapt. Fisher's time with the Rams did him no favors on how we perceive him as a football collective. But I know there are many fan bases out there that would kill for an 8-8 season. So in a world of Andy Reid's, Sean McVay's, and Kyle Shanahan's, shout out to Jeff Fisher for being our mediocre hero.